And so I made my elf girl, and I just decided, like, I'm going to make every reference in the world, so I called her Morrigan Daggerfall, and her nickname was V, so just figure that out now. Just tie everything in.
All right, then.
I was playing a couple games recently that were in systems that are not Dungeons and Dragons, because I have been very curious about how mechanics in other systems work, and considering that there aren't a ton of game groups that, are around for anything, really.
Have you tried looking?
No. So, but considering that people that I know specifically don't necessarily play a lot of these, I thought that I would do the next best thing and play some video games that are based on those systems. So
what could go wrong?
Yeah, you'd be surprised. So the two games that I tried out were Pathfinder Kingmaker and Shadowrun Honk Kong. Of course, based on Pathfinder 2e and Shadowrun, the classic Shadowrun. Yeah, I can tell you that they are markedly different than Dungeons and Dragons in the systems themselves. Are you familiar with either one of those games?
Yeah, I have both Pathfinder Kingmaker and Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous.
Okay, excellent.
Same company.
Yes.
I think they're both pretty decent, but also I do realize, as what I was saying to you when I saw you were playing that, an issue I had with Pathfinder Kingmaker or Wrath of the Righteous is that the game assumes you know how to play Pathfinder right out the gate. And that is a really big downside to it, because if you're coming at this, let alone from a standpoint of not ever playing a tabletop RPG, you would be solely confused.
Yes, you really would.
Even me, coming at this from a standpoint of having played a ton of 5e and starting in 3.5, which is what original Pathfinder is completely based off of, I was very confused at the beginning with some of the stuff in character creation.
So what I decided to do with Kingmaker was I decided I would make max. Basically, I would just see if I could make max so that I would be able to kind of like compare bard to bard about how the skills work and everything like that. And I thought, well, that seems to be a good idea. Little did I know that like the first NPC that you meet is also a bard that has the exact same skill set, but whatever, it's fine. I was a little surprised by, one, that when I could do a point-buy system, you could literally just set skills to 20, and you could set other skills down to, like, 5 or whatever. I was like, okay.
That's a remnant of 3.5.
Yeah. Because, like, in a point-buy system, I don't know if you've seen the point-buy system of D&D 5e, but usually they'll tap out at 15, and they'll only let you go down to, like, 8.
Are you talking about stat points?
Yes.
Okay.
For your stats. Yeah, for your base stats. If you roll, obviously you can go as high as 18 and as low as 3, but if you're doing the point-buy system, they don't let you go beyond 15 or below 8 as a general rule.
I feel like that's GM's discretion.
Yeah.
To be fair, in 5e, you can't have a stat over 20.
This is true, and I think in 3.5 you could, right?
Yeah, it could get nutso.
Of course, there are a few things, like, not to get too, but if you had, like, belts of giant strength or something, you could, or there are some other status effects where you could take certain skills over 20, but it's rare. It's rare. But anyway, so I was making the bard, and I started to notice immediately, like, I was a little confused as to how the spells part of this works. Because it's like, oh yeah, you got some cantrips here, and you got some, like, you can have, like, a level 1 spell or 2. One thing I was noticing is that the offensive spells for a bard are, like, not very, they're not very present. It's almost all support and all like songs that you can do in the field. But the thing that I was very confused about with the spellcasting portion is why I was sometimes allowed to do spells and sometimes not. Like, I knew that I had certain spell slots, but it didn't really explain to me how many I had and why, when I was recovering them, and and anything like that. So I kept thinking to myself, oh, this is a really great spell, I'll take sleep, great. And then I would cast sleep, and then I didn't know when I'd ever be able to cast sleep again. So that was a little bit strange. I didn't have like did I have a musical instrument? I guess I did get a musical instrument at some point, but I realized that they were trying to kind of create more of a support class specifically out of Bard, and I started to think to myself, well, if I keep playing this, I might have to cross-class into like one of the magic types so that I have something going on. It's not like in a D&D where, realistically, you could go right to level 20 with any of the classes and be perfectly fine. It feels like it's really encouraging you to cross-class into a few different things to mix
It's
stuff
encouraging
up.
you to know what you're getting into the moment you create your character.
Yeah, it really does. Also, again, with that encumbrance thing we were talking about earlier, yeah, the encumbrance really comes into play pretty quickly for your characters. I guess something that was interesting for the narrative was that you do have ways of, determining your alignment by the actions that you take in certain moments,
yeah.
and that those alignments are more meaningful, I think, with the Pathfinder system, because they actually inform different interactions. Like in D&D, it really, your alignment might mean something, but
you're comparing a video game and a tabletop game,
right? But even in the video game adaptations I found of D&D, like I remember back in Baldur's Gate, it didn't really seem to have as much weight to it. Like in Baldur's Gate 2, there are technically evil quests you can go on, but they're not really marked as like evil quests. Like, I think it was the human skin armor quest where you have to get all the components together. And they say like, oh yeah, this is what you do if you were evil characters, and you even had evil NPCs. But they didn't like say, oh yeah, well your alignment won't let you do. No, they really didn't. They didn't really tell you that it was like not something that you could take on because of alignment. In Pathfinder Kingmaker, though, they actually say, like, oh, here's a choice of different dialogue options, and these are what different kinds of alignments would pick. What do you want to do? What actions do you want to take? So, it felt like that was a little bit more meaningful. I was surprised by the the skill bonuses, because you would get, unlike the proficiency bonuses and having everything tied to your base stats, they would just say, like, yeah, this informs a little bit about it with your base stats, but also, every level you put points into.
That's from 3.5.
Yeah. I'm realizing that now. That was like a thing in 3.5.
Yeah, it was a thing that you could absolutely go nuts with certain skills.
Yeah.
Like rogues and other classes that were skill monkeys would absolutely top heavy. Be like, do I want to stealth real good? Then you'd go, all right, I've got sneak and I've got hide.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, you've got hide and move silently, and then you use those two skills to sneak.
Got it. Interesting. I realized that the numbers start to get pretty nuts too, because I would put points into it, and I think I would get like a 3 bonus or something as a bard to the different spell points. So it's like I'm only like level 3, but some of my skills get like a plus 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
To skills. Doesn't take very long. So there was that. They seem to encourage you to try some different skill combinations, because right up at the gate they're like, yeah, every level you figure out, like, do you want to just raise this level up again? But these are also a bunch of things that you can cross-class into based on your basic stats. So they give you those options. and I thought that was neat, but it is very obfuscating up at the start about, like, how you're supposed to play this game, and even the tactical part when you get into combat, about, like, why are my attacks not seeming to work? Like, what is the area of attack, of effect that I'm going into? Sleep works very differently, too, in that system than it does in D&D, because in the D&D version of Sleep, it's based on the number of hit points for the enemies that are in an area, or the creatures in the area. And in Pathfinder, it's about making skill checks for each of the characters that are in the area of effect. So I had to get used to a few of those things, and probably over time, I would be able to figure it out, but it did not do any favors to try and get people up to speed.
Yeah, no, the front end, even, again, I played 3.5 for a long time, and even me at the beginning of this game was like, the fuck?
Yeah. I don't really know what they were going for.
It was the assumption that you already know how to play Pathfinder 2E.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I've backed it, and I'm waiting for it for the Rogue Trader game, and I'm hoping they do a better job with the tutorial for that, because that's based on the actual FFG and Rogue Trader tabletop game, which is a D10 system.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So if I were to say, Nathan, do you want to try this game, and their tutorial wasn't very good, you might have no idea of what the fuck is going on. It's a very different system.
Yeah. Rogue Trader does sound like an interesting concept.
It is, and I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, I hope that they understand that, like, we might not all be super familiar with Warhammer. Well,
it's not even the Warhammer part that's being unfamiliar with. I don't think that'll really matter, because lore dumps and whatnot will be fine.
Sure.
And learning about the universe is fine. But if they don't do a good job explaining how to play, like the system, how to read the numbers, because you're rolling, every roll is made with a D10.
Sure.
Every skill roll is made with a D10, 2D10. It's the D10 100 set.
Okay.
So you're rolling versus 100.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that would take a little bit of tutorial orientation to get used to.
Yeah.
But okay. If they didn't give that to me, I'd be in trouble.
So what was the other game you played? Shadowrun?
Yeah, so technically I have 3 different Shadowrun games, but I started playing the most recent one because I just wanted to see the more recent version, and it's Shadowrun Honk Kong. All of these are from Harebrained Schemes, and they're well known for a few different kinds of games, but at any rate, so you might not be familiar with Shadowrun, but I liked the concept before I started playing, because they basically take the idea, like from the setting standpoint, of some fantasy elements, but in more of like a cyberpunk sort of world.
Yeah, it's a dystopia.
Yeah, it is a dystopia.
Corporations run the world.
It's sort of cyberpunk, but imagine if you could play trolls and orcs and elves and like dwarves and stuff as well. They all live in this system, and magic is like an actual thing in this world as well. So that's sort of Shadowrun. I was going to say cyberpunk. Cyberrun.
Cyberrun. Shadowpunk.
Shadowpunk, the game. We've got to make that now. In Hong Kong, the first thing out of the gate was to make my character. And this is where I was going to kind of get an idea of the differences between this and systems that I am familiar with. And so I made my elf girl, and I just decided, like, I'm going to make every reference in the world, so I called her Morrigan Daggerfall, and her nickname was V, so just figure that out now. Just tie everything in.
Alright then.
And so the first thing that I see is that there's all of these stats. So you have your stat block with, like, quickness and strength and toughness and all of that. What was interesting about that character builder is that it's not putting in like individual points so much as you have a karma system. You gain karma points as you go through the game, and then you can dump a number of those into different skills. In some ways, it feels like it encourages you to take multiple things at low levels because it doesn't cost much in karma. The way it works is that if you want to do something to level 1, it costs 1 karma point. To level 2, it costs 2, 3,
Right.
4, etc. And so you have to spend a lot when you get to
I
higher
think
levels.
World of Darkness did something similar.
I think it might actually, where there are certain points that you can put in, and you have like 5 levels of different stats. I think that, I want to say for like your emotional, physical, and mental stats. I want to say maybe there were 3 or 4. This actually has a lot more levels to it. In fact, if you're a human, you have like 9 levels that you can put into any of these stats. But if you're any of the other races, there might be up to 12 levels for different stats. But the interesting thing I found is that you have your base stat, and then you have all of these secondary stats that you also put points into that are your actual abilities tied to your base stats. So, for instance, I was like, well, I'm going to be the street samurai, and being a street samurai, I'm probably going to do well with focusing heavily on guns. So I took quickness. Quickness is really the stat that also allows you to raise up, literally every single kind of gun that you could get. In order to get higher levels in like rifle or handgun or anything like that, you have to have already gotten to the necessary level of quickness, because it's your base stat. If you want to get to level 3 in rifle, you have to already have level 3 in quickness, etc., etc. Subsystems, same thing. You have to have the majority in that. And, of course, you raise up those levels, it becomes easier to use, and sometimes you'll get a special bonus, like for reloads or clip capacities or whatever. It does allow you to go super, super heavy into individual stats if you wanted to. And in similar fashion to that trope episode we were talking about, you could make characters that are very much broken because they won't function. So you do have to be careful and conscientious of that up at the gate. I thought to myself, well, I'll try to put a few little points into everything else because I want to make sure that, I'm situated because I don't really know what I'm getting into. Once you get into the system, though, I thought that the game itself was pretty interesting. The combat system is going to remind you a little bit of XCOM. It's, you can run up to cover, you get benefits from different cover, you can flank and stuff like that. You have a 2-hit ratio on targets, usually based on how far away they are, how accurate you are, etc. You have some other abilities that you can do that are like on cooldown timers, essentially. And so it's going to feel a lot like that kind of tactical combat when you get into it. And then, another neat mechanic I found in it is where you get... Oh god, what do they call it? It's not really cordiality, but it's like being able to speak to people in certain ways. For instance, you can choose one at the beginning, and if you're good at charisma, you'll get more of these, where you have like corporate or gang or like Shadowrunner or anything like that. And if you're talking to people that are in gangs or in the corporate world or security, you might get extra speech options that will allow you to succeed easily on those. Because you actually understand that world enough that you can easily discuss things with them. And so you can talk to people in that regard, if they're also in those worlds. Kind of segregating the different parts of the population between different archetypes, and trying to figure out if you can talk the talk with them. And that's more of the, charisma-based stat here. Overall, though, I think that the concept of the game was really interesting. where you're going around, like you're almost like on like a wet works job that went wrong, that went bad
okay.
from the beginning. You're with these characters, you know this one person, this other one you've never really met before. What's up with that? You're going to check out a deal, meet with this like seedy underworld, and then like the cops show up. They start sniping people. You have to get out of the city, and you're on your way to figure out what the hell just happened, and trying to figure out how you're not going to get yourself shot in the process. So, interesting concept. I thought the systems were really neat. I kind of like that idea of building up characters based on getting a series of points, because when you would complete missions, you would just periodically get like one karma point as you kept going onward. And you could either save them up and get like a really high level stat, or you could just dump them into low level stats throughout the period. But there's no levels like you think of in a Pathfinder or a Dungeons and Dragons. You don't ding and get a level. You just gain karma and keep, sort of like actually World of Darkness. If you remember, World of Darkness doesn't really have levels, so to speak. Unless I'm misremembering that, but you might be able to tell me. I don't remember levels in World of Darkness.
I don't remember much. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
It's been a very long time.
When you were playing World of Darkness, were you playing vampires or werewolves?
I think I played a paranormal investigator.
Oh,
actually.
That's a whole other thing I didn't know they did. Okay. Interesting. The only thing I really remember about World of Darkness was what Bloodlines taught me, and the main takeaway I had there was that werewolves much more powerful than vampires. That was the only thing I really got out of it. But I like the idea of like that level-less system, so to speak. I thought that it was a cool idea, but I think what I was really impressed by was the concept of Shadowrun as a setting more than anything else. Like, I'd want to play a Shadowrun game just because I like the concept of being in like this post-apocalyptic, like cyberpunk fantasy mashup world.
Yeah, that's kind of like me with the 40K setting. It's an interesting, really rich setting with a lot going on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different ways that you can deal with it. And like for Rogue Trader, it's like you're really powerful merchants.
Yeah.
Like, really powerful, and you're outside the jurisdiction of the Imperium. Have fun.
Yeah, it's just a really neat concept for a game. I think I appreciate
would
those
like
more now.
I would like to play Rogue Trader again at some point.
Yeah. I would like to play a few different kinds of systems as well, even though I have about 1 billion different D&D characters I'd like to try. Just to see what they are, because I think some of them were good. I guess this is the part, though, I'd like to just say, like, the who wore it better, because mostly with these two games, the whole point was I wanted to figure out, the systems. And I think the key here is which one was able to present their system in a beneficial way for the outsider who doesn't have any idea what the hell's going on.
I feel like you're gonna say Shadowrun.
I am gonna say Shadowrun, because I think maybe just because Pathfinder is a little obscure even for people that have played the game, but Kingmaker looks really nice, and I appreciated what they did with it. I just found it to be very confusing, and I didn't feel like I learned much about Pathfinder as a system when I was playing it, unless it is like that, and then I'm like, oh, maybe I can skip that.
I've never played Tabletop Pathfinder, and I ended up making about 5 or 6 different characters before I settled on one I felt like I liked.
Sure.
Just how the mechanics of that character worked.
Sure.
And I tried like a couple of the more strange ones to me that aren't like D&D classes from 3.5.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck is this class and how does it work?
Right. The thing that I found pretty weird is, so like I'm a magic caster, and like I had another one in my party. We're both bards, And I thought to myself, well, you know, magic is really powerful in D&D, so I should be able to, like, get some hits off, you know, because I'm kind of squishy. And Amory, who's, like, the barbarian lady at the very beginning...
Oh, yeah.
Just, like, rage mode starts... It like, just took out everybody so fast while I'm, like, trying my hardest to, like, get my ear-piercing scream to do, like, 3 damage or something. And then you just put Amory into, like rage mode, and she just goes up, smacks with a sword, and does, like, 50 points of like, 15
I will say, the way you can customize your character during creation is really great.
It is. They do a good job. Yeah.
Teaching you how any of that affects anything and some of the other stuff is not as great.
Exactly.
Because it's like, I don't know what I want to have to be able to make this decision.
Right. I didn't really know what I was going in very blind to both of these. I didn't know what to expect, but I did like that Shadowrun kind of explained up at the front, like, okay, these are the different kinds of character classes. This is kind of the way that they play, and then kind of leave you to your own devices. But I didn't really feel particularly lost by it, and maybe because I was familiar with other tactical games, I was like, oh yeah, this is a little bit like Wasteland. I can get around, like, how it functions. And so I did encourage me to say, like, oh yeah, Shadowrun looks fun. But Pathfinder, I didn't necessarily know if it was going to be fun based on what Kingmaker showed me. So Shadowrun, pretty nice. Pathfinder, Kingmaker, cool, just not as engaging.
I think if you're going to do that and you want to try again, make a martial class.
Yeah, I think I will.
Spellcaster, or make like a ranger.
Oh, okay.
One of those variants, and maybe you'll find it a little bit easier to grasp. But
sure,
that's if you want to go back to it.
Yeah, I do think I probably made a mistake, because in most RPGs, the first time I play, I will usually do a martial character. Because getting around the basics of smacking things with a sword is usually the easiest way to understand how characters, how to play.
Something like a ranger might work really well because they get spells and they have a bunch of interesting stuff.
Yeah,
and they can be pretty powerful in their own right as well.
Yeah, that, and I was also interested in the fact that there are some classes that are not in D&D.
There's a lot.
There's a lot of classes, and I was kind of curious as to, like, how does this fit into the zeitgeist of this game, you know? So maybe I'll go back, start a new character, because I'm realizing Max does not seem to like playing Pathfinder. even if I might or might not, Max is definitely not feeling it. So
he's going home.
He's going home.
That's what we're doing.
Yes. One question that I would like to leave people with, though, on this note is video games that are based on an RPG system, a tabletop system. Your favorite or your least favorite, like your top and your bottom. What did it the best to translate it from the tabletop version to the video game, and what did it the worst, in your opinion? Please let me know in Discord, or you can even leave comments down below this video. Thank you.